Cynthia didn't ask if I was okay with the weekend. She came into the kitchen already dressed for it, like the decision had been made somewhere else, and I was just the last person to hear about it. I was sitting at the table with Theodore, helping him with a worksheet about fractions. He had his pencil in one hand and half a peanut butter sandwich in the other, and he kept trying to turn every answer into a drawing. It was a normal Thursday night. Dishes in the sink. Dryer running down the hall. The kind of night where nothing big is supposed to happen. Then Cynthia walked in wearing black jeans, heels, and that cream jacket she always saved for nights when she wanted people to notice her. Theodore looked up first. "Mom, where are you going?" She smiled at him, but it was fast. Too fast. "Melissa's thing, baby. Remember?" I looked from her jacket to the small rolling bag by the doorway. "I thought Melissa's thing was tomorrow night," I said. Cynthia didn't even look surprised. She just reached for her phone on the counter and slipped it into her purse. It changed. It's a whole weekend now. I waited for the rest. Some kind of explanation. Sorry, I should have told you sooner." Anything that sounded like she remembered she had a husband and a child in the house. Nothing came. Theodore went back to his worksheet, but I could tell he was listening, because his pencil stopped moving. "A whole weekend," I said, keeping my voice low. "And you're telling me now?" She sighed like I was already being difficult. "Arthur, don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking when this became a weekend." "A few days ago. And you didn't think to mention it?" She finally turned toward me. Her face had that look she got when she had already decided I was the problem. "I don't need to ask permission to spend time with my friends." I pushed the worksheet closer to Theodore. "Buddy, go grab your blue folder from upstairs. I think the reading log is in there." He looked between us. "But I already. Just go check for me, okay?" He slid off the chair and went upstairs slow, dragging his socks on every step. I waited until I heard his door open before I spoke again. "This isn't about permission." "That's exactly what it sounds like." "No," I said. "It sounds like your husband finding out at the door that you're leaving for a weekend." She crossed her arms. "I'm still allowed to have a life." "I never said you weren't. You don't have to say it. You do this thing where you make me feel like I'm wrong for wanting anything outside this house." I almost laughed, but not because it was funny. Because the way she said it was so clean, so practiced, like she had been waiting to use it. "You go out with your friends," I said. "You get your nails done. You take trips with Melissa. I don't stop you. But you judge me." "I'm judging the part where you changed the plan and hid it until you were walking out." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't hide anything. You didn't tell me. That's not the same. It is when we have a son upstairs asking where his mother is going." She looked toward the stairs, then back at me. "Don't use Theodore. I'm not using him. I'm thinking about him. Somebody has to." That landed harder than I meant it to. I saw it in her face. For 1 second, she looked hurt. Then she turned it into anger. "You know what? This is exactly why I need this weekend." I nodded once. "A weekend away from what, Cynthia? Me? Him? The life you chose?" She grabbed the handle of her rolling bag. "I'm not doing this." "Of course you're not." She stopped at the doorway. "I am not some prisoner because I got married and had a child." I stood there with my hands flat on the back of the kitchen chair, trying not to raise my voice. Nobody said prisoner. I said respect. I said priorities. I said don't act like a single woman with no one waiting at home. Her eyes went cold. "Enjoy your speech, Arthur." Then she opened the door and walked out. The sound of it closing was not loud. It didn't shake the walls or make Theodore come running down the stairs. It was just one clean click. But I remember standing there after it happened, staring at the empty doorway, knowing something had shifted. Theodore came back down with the blue folder tucked under his arm. "Is Mom mad?" I turned around and made my face normal. "No, buddy. She's just in a rush." He didn't look convinced, but he sat back down. We finished the worksheet. He got 2 answers wrong, fixed one, argued about the other, then asked if he could have cereal before bed, even though he had already eaten dinner. I let him. That night, after I tucked him in, I sat in the living room with the TV on mute. My phone stayed on the coffee table. Cynthia didn't call. She sent one text around 11. Made it. That was it. No goodnight to Theodore. No sorry that got tense. No details. Just 2 words that felt less like reassurance and more like a receipt. I told myself people fought. People cooled down. Marriage had rough nights. Not every door closing meant the house was falling apart. But the next afternoon, when she came home, she didn't come in like someone returning from a normal night with friends. She came in quiet. Theodore was building something with blocks in the living room when her key turned. He jumped up and ran to her. Mom! She hugged him with one arm because her purse was still on her shoulder and her phone was in her other hand. Hey baby. You were gone forever. I know. I'm tired. I stood in the hallway and watched her kick off her heels. Same cream jacket. Same rolling bag. But her hair was tied back messy, and she didn't meet my eyes. You said weekend, I said. Didn't expect you back this early. She shrugged. Plans changed again. Where did you stay? At a hotel. I waited. She bent down to unzip her bag like the zipper needed all her attention. Why? Because I'm asking. The group ended up there. Nobody wanted to drive after being out late. It could have been true. That was the annoying part. Nothing about it was impossible. Friends go out. Plans change. People get rooms. It all sounded normal enough if you didn't watch her face while she said it. What hotel? She paused just long enough for me to notice. Downtown. The Westbridge. With Melissa? With everyone. Everyone had rooms. She stood up then, annoyed again. Arthur, I'm exhausted. Are you really going to question every detail? No. I asked 3 questions. And they sound like an interview. Theodore looked up from the floor. I saw his little face getting still, so I backed off. Fine, I said. Cynthia walked past me, close enough that I caught perfume, mint gum, and something else I couldn't place. She went upstairs, and a minute later the shower turned on. I stood in the living room while Theodore held up 2 blocks. Dad, does this look like a tower or a robot? I looked down at him and forced a smile. Robot. Definitely. For the next few days, I tried to let it settle. I really did. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't checking drawers or asking where she was every hour. I went to work, picked Theodore up from school, made dinner, kept the house moving. Cynthia was there, but not really. Her phone became part of her hand. At breakfast, it sat angled beside her coffee. At dinner, it stayed face down near her plate. When a message came in, she checked it too fast. When I walked into a room, she locked the screen. One night Theodore asked her to help with his spelling words. In a second, she said, thumbs moving. He waited. Mom, I said in a second. He looked at me, then back at his paper. I took the list from him. Come on, I'll do it. Cynthia didn't even notice. Another night, I came into the bedroom, and she was laughing at something on her phone. Not a loud laugh. A small, private one. The kind you don't make at a group chat about groceries or school events. What's funny? I asked. Her smile disappeared. Nothing. That was a pretty happy nothing. She put the phone on the nightstand, screen down. Melissa sent something dumb. About the weekend? Her eyes flicked to me. Why are you still on that? I asked one question. No, Arthur. You keep circling it. Maybe because something feels off. She pulled the blanket over her legs and turned toward her side of the bed. You're overthinking. Maybe I was. That's what I told myself the first time. And the second. But after a while, small things stop being small when they all point the same direction. She took calls outside. She lowered her voice in the laundry room. She started giving Theodore short answers, like being a mother was suddenly background noise to whatever was happening on that phone. Then, on Wednesday evening, I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water. Cynthia was leaning against the counter, smiling down at a message. Her face was soft in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. She didn't hear me at first. Then the floor creaked. Her head snapped up, and the smile vanished so fast it was like someone had turned off a light. I stopped in the doorway. She locked the phone and slid it behind her mug. Neither of us said anything. That was the moment I knew not to ask. Not yet. Because asking without facts only teaches someone how to lie better. So I got my glass of water, looked at my wife like everything was normal, and decided I was done guessing. 2 weeks after that kitchen moment, Cynthia told me she was pregnant. She didn't do it with a smile. She didn't wrap her arms around me or pull out one of those little tests with shaking hands like people do when the news is shared between 2 people who still feel like a team. She said it while standing at the end of the bed, folding one of Theodore's school shirts. I'm pregnant. That was it. I was sitting on the edge of the mattress, taking off my watch. For a second, I didn't move. Not because I didn't understand the words, but because of how she said them. Flat. Careful. Like she was dropping a fact into the room and waiting to see what it broke. I looked at her hands. She kept folding the shirt, but she had already folded it twice. When did you find out? I asked. This morning. At home. She nodded. You took a test? Yes, Arthur. That's usually how it works. There was that edge again. Defensive before I even gave her a reason. I stood up slowly. How far along? She shrugged. A few weeks. A few weeks. I don't know exactly. You didn't call the doctor? I will. I watched her put the shirt into Theodore's drawer, then pull it back out, like she forgot what she was doing. The math came into my head before I wanted it to. I knew the last time Cynthia and I had been close. Not in some vague husband way. I knew because after the bachelorette weekend, things between us had gone quiet and strange. Before that, there had already been distance. There were dates I could count, nights I could remember, and what she had just said did not land cleanly. It landed right back on that hotel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step closer. Is it mine? Her hand stopped. For 1 second, nothing in the room moved. Then she turned around. What? You heard me. Her face changed like she had been waiting for the question and still wasn't ready for it. Are you serious right now? Yes. I tell you I'm pregnant, and that's what you ask me? That's what I ask when the timing feels wrong. The timing feels wrong because you've been building some little story in your head ever since Melissa's weekend. No, I said. The timing feels wrong because calendars exist. She looked away first. That was what hit me. Not the words. Not the anger. The looking away. Cynthia, I said quieter now. Look at me and tell me it's mine. She laughed once, but it had no humor in it. I can't believe you. Look at me. She did, but only for a second. It's yours. There was a pause before it. A tiny gap. Anybody else might have missed it. I didn't. I nodded, but not because I believed her. I nodded because Theodore was in the next room playing with his dinosaur set, and I was not going to turn my house into a scene he would remember. Okay, I said. Cynthia stared at me like she expected more. That's it. For now. She didn't like that. I saw it immediately. She wanted anger, maybe. She wanted me to make some big emotional mistake so she could point at it and say, see, this is why I don't talk to you. But I gave her nothing. That night, after Theodore went to sleep, Cynthia took a shower. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. I was walking past it with laundry in my hands. I didn't pick it up. I didn't unlock it. I didn't touch it at all. But the screen lit up. Unknown number. Still thinking about that night. The message preview sat there bright and clear for 2 seconds before the screen went dark again. I stood there with a towel in my hand, staring at my own reflection in the black glass. That should have been the moment I stormed into the bathroom and demanded answers. That would have felt good for about 10 seconds. Then she would have denied it, deleted things, warned whoever was on the other end, and turned the whole thing into a fight about privacy. I wanted to break down that door right then, but I chose to wait for the proof instead. Would you have confronted her immediately or waited for the facts? Write your thoughts in the comments. So I folded the towel. I put it in the drawer. And I remembered the number. The next morning, I called Mark Reynolds from my truck before going into work. Mark and I had known each other since college. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't some movie-style guy in sunglasses following people through parking lots. He did quiet private investigation work, mostly for businesses and legal cases, and he knew how to stay inside the lines. When he answered, his voice was rough. Arthur, everything good? No. That got him quiet. I gave him the number. Then the hotel name. The weekend. Melissa's party. The date Cynthia came home. I kept it clean. No long speech. No theory about my marriage. Just facts. I don't want guesses, I told him. I don't want anything that causes trouble. I want to know who this number belongs to, and whether there's anything legal and usable connecting that person to the Westbridge that weekend. Mark was silent for a second. This about Cynthia? Yes. And you're sure you want to know? I looked through the windshield at people walking into the office with coffees and laptop bags, like the whole world was still normal. I'm past wanting, I said. I need facts. I'll see what I can do. While Mark checked, I kept my routine. That was the hardest part. I made Theodore breakfast. I packed his lunch. I sat through a parent email about a science project. I took out the trash. I answered Cynthia like we were just a married couple going through a tense stretch. She got worse. Not louder. Not obvious. Just careless. She stepped outside for calls more often. She stopped leaving her phone on counters. She carried it room to room, even when she was only going to refill a glass of water. If Theodore came near her while she was typing, she turned the screen away without thinking. One evening, I came home early because a meeting got canceled. Cynthia was in the back hallway, near the laundry room, speaking low. No, he's not suspicious. I stopped with my keys still in my hand. She turned and saw me. Her face went blank. Then she ended the call. Work? I asked. She swallowed. Yes. You tell people at work whether I'm suspicious? Her eyes sharpened. I didn't say that. I heard you. You heard part of a conversation and decided what it meant. Okay. That word bothered her more than an argument would have. Okay, she said. Yeah, okay. I walked past her and went to Theodore's room. He was on the floor, trying to tape cardboard fins onto a bottle for his project. The tape kept sticking to his fingers. Dad, this rocket is terrible. I sat beside him. Then let's make it less terrible. For half an hour, I helped him cut cardboard and fix the fins. Cynthia stayed downstairs. Once, I heard a cabinet close too hard. I didn't react. Mark called me the next day during lunch. I took it outside behind the building, away from everyone. I have a name, he said. I closed my eyes for a second. Tell me. Victor White. Number is tied to him. He was at the Westbridge that same weekend for a corporate event. Top floor conference block, private rooms reserved under the company account. I didn't say anything. Mark continued, careful now. There's also a staff summary from that night. Nothing dramatic. Just routine security notes. Your wife's group was on the party floor. Cynthia left that floor after midnight. Elevator up. Top floor. She didn't come back down with the group. My hand tightened around the phone. When did she come back? Morning. The word went through me slowly. Morning. Not 10 minutes. Not a wrong elevator. Not a confused walk through a hotel. Morning. Mark didn't fill the silence. That was why I trusted him. Finally, I asked, can it be documented? Enough to build a timeline. I'll send it through the proper channel. No shortcuts. Good. Arthur. I know. No, listen. Don't confront her unless you know what you want out of it. People lie harder when they're cornered. I looked across the parking lot at a couple getting into a car, laughing about something, leaning into each other like trust was easy. She already lied, I said. Then don't give her the steering wheel. After we hung up, I stayed outside for a few minutes. I wanted to feel shocked. I wanted to feel like the ground had opened under me. But the ugly truth was, part of me had already known. The message, the phone, the hotel, the way she couldn't look at me when she said the child was mine. Mark hadn't created the truth. He had only taken the cover off it. That night, Cynthia made pasta and acted almost cheerful. Too cheerful. She asked Theodore about school, touched my shoulder when she passed behind my chair, and talked about scheduling a doctor appointment. I watched her from across the table. She smiled at Theodore. She asked me to pass the salt. She wore my last name like nothing had happened. And I understood something clearly. The next step wasn't discovery. I had discovered enough. The next step was control. I didn't confront Cynthia that night. That was the part that surprised me most about myself. I thought truth would make me loud. I thought once I had a name and a timeline, something in me would break loose. But when I watched her sit at our table and ask Theodore about his spelling test, like she hadn't been carrying a whole other life behind her phone screen, I went quiet. Not weak quiet. Clear quiet. The next day, I told her we were going out to dinner. She looked up from her phone on the couch. Dinner? Yeah. Why? Because we need to talk somewhere calm. Her face tightened, but she covered it fast. About what? I picked up Theodore's backpack from the floor and zipped it. Us. That word made her careful. My mom can watch Theodore, I said. I already called her. Cynthia stared at me for a second longer than normal. You already called your mother? Yes. You made plans without asking me. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was funny, but because of how perfect it was. You've survived that concept before. She looked away. At 6:30, we dropped Theodore at my mother's house. He ran inside with his tablet under one arm and a bag of toy cars under the other. My mother gave me one look over his head, the kind only a mother can give. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't ask in front of him. I just said, "Thanks, Mom." Cynthia stayed by the car. The restaurant was downtown, a quiet place with low lights and tables spaced far enough apart that people could pretend they had privacy. I chose it because nobody screamed in a place like that. Nobody threw plates or stormed around without becoming the whole room's entertainment. Cynthia noticed too. You picked somewhere nice, she said after we sat down. I picked somewhere quiet. She opened the menu, but her eyes weren't reading it. Are you going to tell me what this is? The server came by. I ordered water. Cynthia ordered tea she didn't want. We sat there for a few minutes pretending to be normal. A couple behind us laughed softly. A man at the bar checked his watch. Forks tapped plates. Life kept moving around us like our table wasn't about to split in half. Then I said, "Who is Victor White?" Cynthia froze. Not a big reaction. Just enough. Her fingers stopped on the edge of the menu. Her eyes stayed down for half a second too long. Then she looked up. "I don't know." I nodded once. "Try again." Her mouth tightened. "Arthur, I don't know who that is." He was at the Westbridge the same weekend as Melissa's party. She leaned back, like distance could help her. So his number was on your phone. What are you talking about? The message. Still thinking about that night. Her face changed color, just a little. She glanced toward the nearest table, then lowered her voice. "You went through my phone?" "No. You expect me to believe that?" "I saw the preview when it lit up. I didn't open anything. I didn't need to." She looked away again. I kept my voice even. "You left the party floor after midnight. You took the elevator to the top floor. That's where Victor White's company had rooms reserved. You didn't come back down until morning." She stared at me. The lie was still sitting in her mouth. I could see her trying to decide if it had enough room to breathe. "It wasn't like that," she said. That was the first honest thing she said, not because it was true, but because denial had finally stopped working. "What was it like?" She rubbed her forehead. "It was one night. I felt something inside me go still. One night," I repeated. "I was upset. We'd fought. Everyone was drinking. Melissa kept saying I needed to relax, and people were pushing drinks, and the whole thing just got out of hand." I looked at her across the table, at the woman I had built a home with, the mother of my son, sitting there trying to turn a choice into weather. Things don't just get out of hand by themselves. She swallowed. "I know." "No, you don't. Because you're still saying it like the room did it. Like the music did it. Like Melissa did it. Like a glass in your hand made decisions for you." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry yet. Cynthia always knew when tears might help, and even now I couldn't tell if they were real or useful. "It didn't mean anything," she whispered. "It meant enough for you to lie." I was scared. "You were careful." That shut her up. I leaned forward slightly. "Is the child mine?" She closed her eyes. There it was. The answer before the answer. "Cynthia, I don't know," she said, barely above a whisper. For a moment, I heard nothing but the restaurant around us. A glass being set down. Someone laughing near the entrance. The server asking another table if they needed anything else. I sat back. "You told me it was mine." I panicked. "No. You protected yourself." She looked at me then, finally. "Arthur, please. We can fix this." "No. You don't mean that." "I do. Theodore needs both of us." That one hit, but not the way she wanted. I stared at her. "Theodore is exactly why I'm not building our family on a lie." Her tears came then. Quiet, controlled, still trying not to draw attention. "It was one night," she said again. "You keep saying that like it makes it smaller." Because it was. No. One night became weeks of lying. One night became a pregnancy you try to hand me like a normal family announcement. One night became you looking our son in the face every morning while hiding what you did. She put one hand over her mouth. I placed a few bills on the table even though we hadn't eaten. "I brought you here because I wanted you to say it to my face. Arthur, don't leave. I'm done talking as your husband tonight." I stood up. She reached across the table, but I moved my hand before she touched it. Not dramatically, just enough. Outside, the air was cold. I walked to the car alone. She came out a minute later, but I didn't speak on the drive. She cried quietly in the passenger seat. Once she said my name. I kept my eyes on the road. The next morning, after taking Theodore to school, I called Rebecca Collins. Rebecca had handled a messy business dispute for a guy I knew, and everybody said the same thing about her. She didn't waste words. That was what I needed. Her office was on the 5th floor of a brick building near the courthouse. No fancy view. No soft music. Just clean desks, gray walls, and a woman in a navy suit who listened without interrupting. I gave her the timeline. Melissa's weekend. The hotel. Victor White. The message. The pregnancy. Cynthia's admission at dinner. Rebecca took notes on a yellow pad. When I finished, she tapped her pen once. "First, do not empty accounts. Do not hide assets. Do not do anything that makes you look reckless." "I won't." "Good. You separate what you can legally separate. You document everything. You keep communication calm. No threats, no emotional texts, no late-night arguments." I nodded. "Second, paternity has to be established. I want a test. You'll get one. Until then, do not make promises about the pregnancy. Do not agree to anything verbally because she's upset." That made my stomach twist, but I understood. And Theodore? I asked. That's where you stay steady. School records, routines, medical appointments. Who does daily care? If you've been the stable parent, we show that clearly. I have. Then keep being that. Boring helps you here, Arthur. Predictable helps. I almost laughed for the first time in days. Boring I can do. Rebecca closed the folder. Then we moved cleanly. That afternoon, I started. I changed passwords. Email, banking, cloud storage, phone account. I copied tax records, mortgage paperwork, insurance documents, Theodore's school forms, medical records, everything that mattered. I opened a separate account the way Rebecca told me to, and moved only what she said I could move. Every step had a record. Every step had a reason. Cynthia noticed by dinner. She came into the kitchen holding her phone. Why can't I get into the main email? I was rinsing Theodore's lunch container. Password changed. Her eyes widened. Excuse me. You can send me what you need. I'll forward anything that belongs to you. You locked me out. I secured the accounts. She stared at me like I had become a stranger. You're acting insane. No, I'm acting carefully. This is my house too. For now, yes. Her face flashed with fear before anger covered it. What does that mean? It means I spoke to a lawyer. She stepped back. You what? Theodore was in the living room, watching a cartoon too loudly. I lowered my voice anyway. I spoke to a lawyer. We're doing a DNA test. We're documenting everything. After that, we'll know what comes next. You're cold, she whispered. I dried my hands on a towel and looked at her. No, I was cold last night in the restaurant. Today I'm clear. She shook her head, tears starting again. You're going to destroy this family. No, Cynthia. I'm refusing to pretend you didn't already crack it. She grabbed the back of a chair like she needed it. What about Theodore? That's exactly who this is about. You can't take him from me. I'm not using him. I'm protecting his life from chaos. She cried harder, but this time it didn't move me the same way. Not because I hated her. I didn't. That would have been easier. I still saw pieces of the woman I married, and that made it worse. But every time I softened, I thought of her sitting at that restaurant saying, I don't know. I walked to the hallway, picked up the folder Rebecca had prepared, and came back. Cynthia looked at it like it was a weapon. I placed it on the kitchen table between us. From now on, I said, trust is not part of the conversation. She didn't answer. I tapped the folder once. Facts are, the DNA results came back on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting in Rebecca Collins' office with a paper cup of coffee I had not touched. The cup had gone soft in my hand, but I kept holding it because I needed something to do. Rebecca opened the envelope, read the page, and her face did not change. That was how I knew before she said it. Arthur, she said, setting the paper down, you are not the father. I looked at the page anyway. The words were clean. Official. No emotion. No room for maybe. No room for Cynthia's pause, her excuses, her tears, or her one-night explanation. Just a result. For a few seconds, I felt nothing. Then I felt everything at once, but I didn't let it out. Not there. Not in that chair. Not with Rebecca watching me like she knew I was standing on the edge of something. What happens now? I asked. We move immediately, she said. We file clean. We protect your position with Theodore, the house, and the finances. You keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Calm, documented, predictable. I nodded. She slid the paper into a folder and passed it to me. Do not let her turn this into a hallway fight, Rebecca said. Say what needs to be said. Nothing more. That had become the rule of my life. Nothing more. When I got home, Cynthia was in the kitchen. Same kitchen where she had walked in with that rolling bag. Same table where Theodore and I had done fractions while she stood there dressed for a weekend she had already chosen. She looked up when I came in. Her eyes went straight to the folder. You got it. Yes. She didn't ask what it said. That told me enough. I placed the folder on the table. I'm not the father. Cynthia closed her eyes and gripped the counter behind her. For the first time, she didn't deny anything. No anger. No speech about control. No, you're overthinking. Just silence. I almost hated that more. How long did you know it was possible? I asked. She opened her eyes, wet and tired. I didn't know. That's not what I asked. Her mouth trembled. Since the beginning. I nodded once. There it was. The full shape of it. She had known from the first test that there was a chance, and she still looked me in the face and said it was mine. It was one night, she said. I let out a breath through my nose. You need a new sentence. Arthur, please. No. One night became a child. One night became weeks of lying. One night became you trying to put another man's life into my hands without telling me the truth. She put both hands over her face. We can still recover from this. I stared at her. No, we can't. You don't know that. I do. She dropped her hands. What are you saying? The filing is already prepared. You'll be served. Her face changed. That was when she understood I hadn't just been reacting. I had been moving. You already filed? Yes. Before telling me? I told you enough. The test finished the rest. She looked around the kitchen like the walls might help her. Where am I supposed to go? I felt the old version of myself move somewhere inside me. The version who would have fixed things, softened things, carried her panic because I knew how. But that man had been used up. I don't know, I said. You're really going to put me out? I'm not doing this for pleasure, Cynthia. But I'm done carrying consequences you created. She stared at me like I had slapped her with calmness. Theodore is my son too. Yes. And you'll see him according to the schedule. You can't just decide that. I'm not deciding it alone. That's why there are lawyers. She cried then. Not soft tears at a restaurant. Not controlled tears meant to slow me down. These were scared, messy, real tears. And I still didn't move toward her. That evening, she packed 2 bags. Theodore was in the living room watching a cartoon, knees tucked under him, a blanket around his shoulders. I sat beside him while Cynthia moved through the house upstairs. He looked toward the ceiling when a drawer opened too hard. Is Mom leaving again? I kept my voice steady. She's staying somewhere else for a while. Did I do something? That question went straight through me. I turned the volume down and looked at him. No, buddy. You didn't do anything. Grown-up problems are not kid problems. He nodded, but he looked smaller than he had that morning. Will she come back? She'll still see you. We're going to make sure everything is organized. He didn't understand all of that, but he understood my tone. Calm mattered. I could see it working, even through the hurt. When Cynthia came downstairs, Theodore ran to her. She hugged him too long. I let her. There were things I would not take from him just because I was angry at her. After she left, the house felt strange. Not happy, not free, just quiet. For weeks, the lie had been living in every room with us. In the kitchen, in the bedroom, on the couch, beside Theodore's backpack. Once it was gone, the house felt empty in a way I could breathe inside. The legal part moved faster than I expected, mostly because Rebecca had everything lined up. Cynthia's pregnancy, the hotel timeline, her unstable choices after the weekend, and the fact that I had been Theodore's daily structure all mattered. There was no big dramatic courtroom scene. No speech. No audience. Just papers. Meetings. Orders. Schedules. I kept the house. I kept control of the main finances. Most importantly, Theodore stayed with me as his primary home. Cynthia got scheduled time, and I followed it exactly. Not coldly toward Theodore. Just clearly toward her. Victor White did not become some great love story. He did not show up with flowers or promises. From what I heard, he backed away the moment the situation had real weight. Cynthia had risked a home for a man who treated her like a bad weekend memory. Melissa wasn't much better. The friend whose party had started the chain of choices suddenly had her own life, her own plans, her own reasons not to be involved. Months later, Cynthia asked to meet for coffee. I agreed because Rebecca said practical communication helped, and because I wanted no mystery hanging between us. She looked different when she walked in. Tired. Less polished. She sat across from me and wrapped both hands around her cup. I'm sorry, she said. I waited. I know I hurt you. You did. And Theodore. Yes. She looked down. I keep thinking if I had just come home that night. But you didn't. Her eyes lifted. Do you ever think we could? No. The word was not loud. It didn't need to be. Her face fell. I'm not asking to erase everything, she said. Yes, you are. Maybe not all at once, but that's where this goes. First coffee. Then memories. Then you crying about how it used to be. Then I'm supposed to help you feel less guilty. She pressed her lips together. I leaned back. You can see Theodore on schedule. You can message me about school, health, pickup times, things he needs. That's it. She nodded slowly, crying again. This time I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel cruel either. I just felt finished. Life after that became smaller, but better. School drop-offs. Grocery lists. Spaghetti on Wednesdays because Theodore decided it was tradition. Homework at the kitchen table. Fixing the loose cabinet handle. Learning how to braid together two pieces of a school project because Theodore insisted it needed to look professional. There was someone new eventually. A woman named Claire, who worked with my sister. She was kind, patient, and never tried to rush into the empty spaces. But she was not the point of the story. The point was that the house stopped feeling like a place where I had to watch corners. One evening, Theodore and I were at the kitchen table working on a project about planets. He had glue on his fingers and a serious look on his face while trying to make Saturn's ring stay straight. "Dad." "Yeah." He didn't look up. "Are we okay now?" I looked around the kitchen. The same table. Same chairs. Same little scratches in the wood from pencils, plates, toy cars, and years of ordinary life. But the air was different. No suitcase by the door. No phone hidden behind a mug. No quiet lie waiting to turn the room cold. Just my son, a half-finished school project, and a house that finally felt steady again. I put one hand on the back of his chair.